Imagine this. One day a stranger calls you, claiming to be from your bank and saying your account has been hacked and you need to act fast. They pressure you, saying if you don't, you'll be left with nothing. Not knowing what to do, you follow their instructions and end up losing all your money. You've been the victim of a scam, and one of the most common methods, so it's not so much your fault, but rather something that often works: phishing. Social tactics use cognitive manipulation to get victims to act as they want, either to compromise their accounts or to get what they want from them, sometimes beyond just money. One of these tactics is to create pressure, urgency, establishing a situation as a priority so that, in the confusion, you make miscalculations by entering survival mode, where structured thinking is more difficult, simply due to physiological reasons and cognitive training in such situations, not due to a total lack of ability. What does this have to do with the story of the emperor's new clothes? A tale where everyone marvels at the monarch's new attire when in reality he is naked, until a child, in his innocence, shatters the collective illusion by pointing out the obvious? Well, it's related because the person we'll be discussing today is both a supposed emperor with no clothes and a con artist who may have deceived you without your knowledge, as in the case of the scam I mentioned at the beginning. The warmongering leader of the most belligerent power has ordered and threatened attacks on civilian infrastructure, defying orders established as fundamental to civilization in charters of humanitarian law on multiple occasions. Ironically, this shatters the myth of the emperor's new clothes, with international law being the emperor in this case. These principles are designed to promise a guaranteed suit of protection, precaution, or retribution against any agent, even a ruler of a belligerent power, for the civilian population, a commitment that, in a way, serves to demand obedience from the people in the face of the supposed guarantee of inalienable rights. But like the emperor's new clothes, this is a fiction, since they cannot even guarantee that the imposed rule will actually protect us or enforce it when it matters, or even, as in this case, do the simple task of marking the obvious violation of their decrees by certain actors. However, the irony is that while the belligerent president has exposed the nakedness of international law, he too is an emperor with no clothes. The office he holds is not binding in a technical or physical sense, it has no material guarantees. His position doesn't imply that he literally has access to weapons, knows how to operate them, or can even support himself, given his proven questionable health. This king's power, his attire, is also a fiction constructed by society. It is fears, traditions, and sometimes unjustified collective commitments that give his decrees any real material effect, even though he himself could not sustain them. In fact, by breaking international treaties, by pointing out the king's nudity, he also breaks the tacit agreement, the taboo against pointing out the nudity of all kings, something that, ironically, is why some of the officials under this belligerent president remain in their posts, for fear of further breaking that taboo and revealing their true position within the world order. And this is the truth, this is a fiction, and fictions have something interesting about them. They can be shattered simply by pointing them out. And before we conclude, let's quickly return to the case of the scam. Because if the emperor has no clothes, but some of your ideas align with his, you can then justify his actions to some extent. Perhaps you logically and reasonably support his heavy-handed approach, the unworkability of the specific international agreements he disregards, and the trust placed in his promises and results. But the point is this: he's not doing it for you, or for anyone else, and that's certain when he hasn't consulted you, but rather pressured you to overlook even the things you had doubts about. It's like a con artist or extortionist. His tactic is to pressure you, to disrespect your ideas, even if they ultimately align with yours. He's not respecting you now, and there's no guarantee he will later, that you won't fall victim to his deceptions until it's too late. So, for all those children who can see the emperor's nakedness, and who wonder what to do, because among other things they've learned helplessness, or have a reasonable fear of getting involved in something bigger than themselves, I have good news, the same news I've already mentioned. Fictions can be shattered simply by pointing them out. And that's what they can do. Point it out, talk about how the emperor has no clothes, repeat it everywhere, about how he has exposed the nakedness of international law, and that he, an octogenarian, very ill, is also an emperor with no clothes. Say it in a whisper, say it out loud, in the streets, talk about it everywhere. Let it be heard everywhere that the emperor has no clothes, so that those who hesitate to say it too will finally do so. When everyone knows that the emperor has no clothes, the fiction ends, as he himself demonstrated to us.